Welcome to Opt In with April Jasper. Relevant conversations about topics important to eye care providers today.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. April Jasper, and this is Opt In with Dr. April Jasper. I am so excited to have a guest with us today who's a friend of mine, but also someone who really is a leader in industry. Now, let me explain to you a little bit about Kelly's background. So, first of all, Kelly, welcome. Thanks for being here on the podcast.
Oh, gosh, April, thank you so much for having me. It's just delightful to be here, and I can't wait to dive in.
So Kelly Babcock is a veteran leadership and business coach who has worked with independent pharmacy owners and innovative entrepreneurs since 2009. She brings real world, in the trenches experience with managing high performance teams and taking visionary ideas from conception through execution across the finish line, producing remarkable business results. And I've had a chance to really get to know Kelly, and I can tell you, I am so excited that you get to hear some of the things that she's going to start out with today. And by the way, as you listen to the podcast, start thinking about how important all this information is. And then we're going to have a deep dive into each of these topics in the courses that you'll find on Optometric Management Education's website. So Kelly, where should we get started? Why don't you start by telling everybody a little bit more about you and your background and how integral really leadership is in everything that we do as owners in a business. And I know pharmacy is a little different than optometry, but there's a lot of similarities.
Oh, gosh, you bet there is. I tell you, April, thank you so much. One of the first places that I like to begin is that I've had such a long career in change management and watching people and organizations and teams transform. And I think that's why I like to say, I have that real time in the trenches experience, because you're right. There are just some universal truths about leadership and about managing and owning and operating a successful business that transcend geography and demographics. And so I love to say that I have had that sort of hard knocks, street savvy in the weeds of managing and leading high performance teams. And not just high performance teams, but also really leading them toward business results. And I think that's where you find the similarity, right? Is that every business wants to see results. And the idea that we want to focus on today is, are they the results that you want? Are you getting the results that you'd like? Are they the desired results? So my background, let me just share very quickly, because
please.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I actually started my career in marketing, public relations, and advertising. And so I was able to really build some fundamentals around how in the world do you get clients? How do you get customers? How do you, in the case of optometry, how do you build that patient base, right? So that was a wonderful way to start my career. And then I transitioned into executive leadership with Weight Watchers International for 20 years. And I was in a variety of leadership positions there, training and operations. So I literally cut my teeth managing a region of about 2,500 service providers, 12 to 15 states on any given day, managing about $40 million in revenue for the company. And it was just an exciting career for me, because where my heart lies is in helping people understand how they can be the best self, how they can, choose a path that really is ultimately fulfilling for them. And it was, I felt like I didn't need to ever watch The Biggest Loser, because I was living it every day. I saw people make tremendous change in their lives. So, what that did for me, April, is that it really fostered a strong belief that change is possible. no matter what you're doing, no matter what business you're in, change is possible. And so that career led me then to really stepping into a leadership role in the pharmacy industry, in the independent pharmacy industry. And so I was the chief operating officer for a coaching and consulting company that really just supported the business development of only independent pharmacy. And I really love those people. I tell you, I really see some incredible similarities. I really think there are a lot of intersects there that what has really worked and helped independent pharmacy owners can absolutely help optometry. That kind of goes back to some of those universal truths about running a business, right? But I spent my time, my last 12, 13 years there, and throughout the thread. So let me just sort of summarize this by saying that the common thread, that the theme that runs through my entire life really is facilitating change and helping people to be the best leader they can be in their businesses and in their lives. And so that's my passion. That's sort of my legacy at this stage in my life. And that's what I'm focused on. And so it's delightful to be able to have a platform and a forum to be able to dialogue and discuss those common elements.
You know, I don't know if our listeners know, but Kelly knows that I have two sisters. One is a primary care doctor and the other one is a pharmacist. She's a PharmD. And wow. I have watched her go through those different struggles of being in different modes of practice as a pharmacist. And when Kelly and I first started talking, Kelly, I didn't even realize that there were still that many independent pharmacies. So how many are there still out there?
About 22,000. Yeah, independent pharmacies all over the country. And I feel like they're part of my family now. And many of them are true entrepreneurs. You go to school, and I'm sure this is going to sound very familiar to you, right, April? You go to school for your skill. You go to school for your profession. So you walk away from pharmacy school or getting your doctor in optometry, and that's what you know. I mean, that's what you want to know. And then you decide you want to open up your own business, and you're faced with a whole host of other issues and situations and circumstances that in many cases, you're wholly unprepared for, right? As a doctor of optometry or as a doctor of pharmacy. So it's a very similar path.
It is. And, I was thinking about it just this morning as I was getting ready to talk to you. And I thought about my journey and, you're right. We graduate from our school, our profession, and we take our boards and we're thrilled that we know how to do our job. But we never really think about the fact that there's more to our job than performing that skill we learned. And so for me, and even if you're not an independent optometry, even if you're in a corporate group or a commercial establishment or an associate, I think what registered with me finally, after probably a couple of years of being in practice, is that I need to understand my role in life, even as a leader. Yeah. And so I want you to kind of give us a general idea. You mentioned that there are some truths that are the same across industry and really across any profession. And those are the basics really that you start with when helping people to facilitate change. So why don't we go through and talk a little bit about where you get started typically when you just dive in working with different owners?
Yeah, it's a great question, April. And I think that the place that I always love to start is really around, every owner is going to have their strength, right? Where they feel that they just excel. And it may certainly be the technical skills that you were trained for. And it may be along the business lines. But here's where I love to begin with this notion of these universal truths. So let me just say that I think let's demystify them, right? And let's simplify them, synthesize them down to what I consider the top four, right? They're really, and even though you could certainly attack all four of these simultaneously, you wouldn't necessarily want to. It's, it's that, how do you eat an elephant, right? Just one bite at a time. and so I really feel like there are some principles that are must-haves, right? So in other words, number one, you must understand your financial situation. That really is the key to getting a good night's sleep. It's the key to the ongoing sustainability and health and growth of your business, the lifeblood of your business, if you will. And so I love to start there because that's important for people to know. Oftentimes in my experience, what I found is that as long as there's money in the bank, then there's no more analysis. There's no more investigation. Would you find that? I mean, is that?
Oh, Kelly, I've even had people say to me when I've talked to them about change that they could create and areas I know that they could improve and they could do it easy without even too much effort. I've had people say to me, well, there's money in the bank. I really just don't feel like doing anything else. And I just am flabbergasted.
Yeah, it is a bit stunning. And yet it's really altogether common to find that to be the case. Again, you didn't go to school unless you're just one of those rare people who decided to get an MBA or a degree in accounting or finance, along with your, doctor of optometry. So,
right.
Here's what I also liken that to, the scenario that you just mentioned, which is all too common. It's like as if you went to the car dealership and decided to buy a car with no gas gauge. And right, we find that so absurd. Like, well, who would do that? But we run our businesses that way every day because that gas, the financial indicators are really your gas gauge. Do you know how full you are? Do you know how close to empty you're getting? And what I found is that when we don't focus on finance first, I may be working with someone who only has 60 to 90 days of cash left. That's scary. They're losing sleep. Yeah. It's just not a great place to be. And so there are some ways that really simple. You hit on the operative word here. Really simple, tactical things you can do on a regular basis with a cadence of accountability that will really be an eye-opener and give you the insight that you need to where you are financially. Because here's the thing, the numbers, that's just the first part of the story. It's really telling you a story about your business. And it's not so much the story as what you decide to do with the story.
Well, right? And you're right, Kelly, when you said that's what keeps you up at night. What's interesting is once you are comfortable enough that you know that you've got the money in the bank that you need to have there to allow you to sleep, what it also allows you to do is it gives you the freedom to make other decisions in your practice that you've always wanted to, but you're afraid to because you're so busy trying to just make sure the money's in the bank the next day.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I have found is tremendous is once you control that, once you know that's okay, now you are free, you smile, you can talk to your patients better. There is nothing worse than walking into the exam room knowing that if this encounter that you're having right now doesn't result in X amount of dollars, it's going to be hard to put food on the table.
April, that is so burdensome, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is just such a heavy way to have to not just run your business, but live your life, right? Yeah. And so you also hit upon some, I think, key operative words that I love to emphasize, and that's freedom, right? Yes. And flexibility to do more in your business and to be more patient focused, quite frankly. That to me is, look, it's patience first, profit second, right? And understanding the story first and foremost, really simple ways that you can do that, not anything complex. I certainly don't have a degree in accounting. And yet having that information, knowledge is power, and it really puts you in the driver's seat in terms of the growth and the sustainability of your business. So that's the first place where, I really like to get that rock solid and have a real nice cadence where that's just not going to be an issue, because then that does allow you to sort of get your head up, lift your head up, look around, scan the horizon. Now you get to focus on, gosh, what does it mean for me to lead my team to desired results?
And that's what I wanted to do next. So I know people want to hear more about the details of finance. We will get to that in a course. But what I want to do next is really dive into, we've learned about one of the 4 things that Kelly says we really need to focus on. What is the second?
Oh boy, this is near and dear to my heart. It is all things leadership, right? All things leadership related. You must be able to lead your team in order to get the results that you want. I mean, there's just really no other way around it. And ironically, April, it's amazing how many folks don't ever really think of themselves as leaders in one capacity or another, even in their own lives, oftentimes. Right. And so really, look, leadership has always been tough. Managing people is tough. It's the hardest, most it'll be the most effort you spend of any effort that you put out during your day. And what happens is that we have this sense that people, our team in particular, will just sort of magically do what needs to be done. And so where I like to also begin around leadership is that there is not a single thing that, if you think of the greatest leader that you can imagine, the most effective, greatest leader of all time in your mind, I promise you that that person learned everything that they brought to the table. Yes. So here's where I think the reassurance comes in, is that leadership and leadership skills can be learned.
Yay.
Just like anything, right? Yes. Yay. Just like anything else in life. Yes, there is some hard work. There may be some elbow grease that we have to apply to it. But here's what we know about leadership today. It is very different than, listen, when I started leading people and managing teams, I was in my late 20s, all those years ago. And wow, times were different. Yeah. Just fast forward in these last 3 years, April, and sure. We are, listen, in your optometric management publication, I was just reading the article about how to recruit and keep teams and keep your staff. Staff retention is huge right now. And here's what we do know is that we're facing, this is no surprise, everybody's heard of the Great Resignation. Yep. But what we're not really talking about is what's driving it. And that's the Great Reassessment. People are reassessing. So the question you have to ask yourself as a leader of a business is, why do I deserve to have the best talent? Yep. How am I showing up as a leader in order to recruit them, retain them, and keep them working and engaged? Because that team engagement, April, I think there are so many avenues, right? If you think about leadership being an umbrella, I think of all the various elements, because you also have to look at culture and team engagement when you think about leadership.
Yes. And that's, so I have to ask you this, because you started out by saying that this is going to be one of the most difficult things you do. You didn't use the word difficult. You just, I think, maybe said time consuming effort. Yes. So then I think we need to have folks then say, they're going to be thinking, if they were here to ask the question, well, why should I bother then? If it's going to take that much effort, that much time, that much learning, why do I want to be that person that spends that time, effort, and energy in this?
Your eyes and your vision are under attack. Damaging blue light from the sun, your phone, your computer, your tablet, even light bulbs and car headlights is constantly bombarding you. The good news is our eyes actually already have a line of defense to counter the effects of blue light. This defense is made up of 3 pigments called carotenoids. MacuHealth with Micromycel, the only supplement with the exclusive patent on all 3 macular carotenoids and micromicelle technology?
Yeah, it is a really critical question. And it's, I think the irony is that the answer is going to be different for everyone. And yet the common, what I would venture to say in my experience is that you went into business for a reason. And really reestablishing the connection to your why. Why did I want to do this in the first place? And knowing that at the end of the day, you can let all of that go. You can say, you know what, I'm not going to bother. And then you just have a job.
Right.
Then you are simply, and not that there's anything wrong with this, right? It is absolutely okay to say my sweet spot is being an optometrist and being the best optometrist that I can be. Bravo. That self-awareness and that consciousness is really critical. That may be your superpower and what you're put on this earth to do. So yes, go do it. And yet, if you decide to open a business and employ people, then you have now assumed another responsibility.
Yes.
And whether you like it or not.
Right.
And so if you don't want to invest the time and the effort, that's okay too. Hire someone who can. Hire someone who is willing to, who has that inclination for wanting to develop and grow and nurture the best in their team. And yet at the end of the day, I say that a lot, right? That's my go-to. At the end of the day, we're going to bottom line this. You want your team to excel so you get to go do more of what you love.
Right.
So there is a payoff. There is a return on your investment of that time spent. And what we do know now, based on recent research and, look, we know that a leader's style is responsible for a whopping 30% of the bottom line.
Wow.
That's too big a percentage to ignore. So we know now also that in particularly a business that is dealing with patients coming in every single day, and there's front facing. You don't have a lot of time to pull someone into a private office and sit down and have an hour-long coaching conversation to elevate their performance. So we have to find workarounds. We have to find ways that you can do that during the day, like quick hits. Those, like real-time opportunities to check in and provide performance feedback. So that's also a part of understanding the unique challenge that is your business, right? Is that how am I supposed to elevate anybody else's performance when I don't even have time to go to the bathroom myself?
Exactly. You know exactly what we're dealing with, Kelly.
Yes.
So I think
familiar.
And, I think when we first get into this, and I can tell you, let me speak for myself, when David and I first bought our own practice and started to work in the practice, I think somehow I just assumed that everyone that worked in the practice with me would be just like me in the fact that they would be self-motivated and would want to come to me with any question they had. And if they didn't know what to do or were having a tough day, they would come out of it and they would come to me and say, hey, what's going on? What do I do in this case? It was really a strange thing for me to realize that this doesn't just happen on its own. And so it brought me to what I think is one of your top 4 items that you always want to emphasize, which is the team and team culture. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, it's such an eye opener, isn't it? That everyone's not like me, right? Or not like you. And especially as a business owner, I can't tell you how many countless times I have heard a pharmacy owner say to me, well, they ought to know. That's their job. They should know that. And, in fact, I was just having this conversation earlier this week with a pharmacy owner who's going to have a team meeting, wants to do a culture reset. So let's just start by talking about culture and team engagement, sort of as two things. All right. And you jump in if I'm going, overtime here. So here's what we do know. about culture is that it's very similar to the weather. You absolutely can feel it. So whether we like it or not, because it tends to be relatively esoteric and intangible, and it's people like to think somehow it's a soft piece of the business, when in actuality it has some very real-time profitability impact as to whether or not your team is going to be able to deliver. So here's what I like to say. Culture is a long-term business strategy. Without question, it is a long-term business strategy. It is something you can never take your eye off the ball. You must constantly be nurturing, growing, so that it is sustainable, and it shifts, it's dynamic, and everyone on the team is responsible for it. It's not just you as the owner, as the leader in the business. This is when everybody on the team becomes a leader in the preservation of the team culture. Culture is simply the way you do things. And it doesn't have to be the same from optometry business to optometry practice to practice. Right. Every practice can be different. It just matters that you have alignment, that everybody on your team understands what's important to you. Right. And that's where we will definitely be doing a little bit of a detour to talk about how important your values are, because if you don't know what's important to you, how will your team? So Brene Brown, who's an author and researcher, very popular these days, she likes to say clear is kind. So the more clear that you can be, right? So for instance, there were 3 culture elements that this particular pharmacy owner wanted to include. Fun. He wanted everyone to be excited and committed. Well, what do those 3 words mean? Right? What do they look like in the context of your business? Because fun is relative, right? So you want to get super descriptive about what your culture looks like. What does it really mean for your culture to be alive and well, so that there is that alignment and you can operationalize it now, right? Now you can hire people toward that culture. You can recruit people who will be a good fit with your culture because you've documented it. You've been able to operationalize it and define specifically, what does fun mean? What does excited about your job mean? What does committed mean? Right. So that is sort of the fundamental piece of culture. And the more you engage your team, then the higher they're going to perform. It's that discretionary effort. They're going to come in early. They're going to stay late. They're going to perform in ways, and I'm just getting goosebumps now. So I know I'm on to something. They're going to perform in ways that you never dreamed possible, because they are so bought in to what's important, because it's aligned. What's important to you is important to them too. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think so many times we tend to generalize, and I've done it myself when talking to other optometrists and say, everyone's employees should fit this mold. Right. And it isn't necessarily true. There will be some things in common, but there will be others that may not be. There would be an awesome employee for another practice that would never fit into my practice because we have a different focus. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. But what's important is to know, and without everybody being on the team and understanding what those values are and what those goals are, it's frustrating for them. Talk about them not being able to sleep at night. I mean, if they really care, they may not have to worry about the money problems you have to worry about and I have to worry about, but they want to please. They want to make you happy. They want to make patients happy. They feel the difference when they come into the practice and knowing that it's running well, and other people know. So I loved when you said at the very beginning, Kelly, that culture can be felt. Yes. And I can tell you so many times, not a day goes by when I'm seeing patients that a patient doesn't come in and sit down, and one of the first things they say to me is, I love your people.
There you go.
And I can feel what you're doing here. They use those exact words.
Yes.
And bingo. Yeah. And here's the thing. I know that we can take care of their eye problems. That's the easiest part of the job.
Yeah. Well, because you're expert in that, right? I mean, that's really why I think that these universal business truths are so important to bring to the table, because they're not the areas that you have historically been focused on, right?
That's right.
And look, here's what we do know is that where you place your attention and where you place your focus, you will see improvement.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I think that when people have asked me in the past, Kelly, how did you move your practice from where it was, not like move location, even though we did that as well.
Yeah. Moving the needle.
Yes. How did you move the needle to where you are today? And how did you do it in a way that you're happy, you're still smiling, you love what you do every day still? And it was a while before I could explain to people what we did. And honestly, the truth of the matter is, for the first few years of us doing what we were doing, even though it was right and we were moving in the right direction, I didn't know exactly what we were doing that was right.
Right.
It was happening because it was there and it was wonderful. But I knew quickly that I needed to figure out what was it that we were doing right and how is it that we can then continue to do this and moving forward. So we've talked about finance, we've talked about leadership, we've talked about the team and culture and how important that is. What do we still need to bring up before we end today?
Yeah, I'd love to just say too, April, that I tend to group team engagement and culture under the umbrella of leadership, because with strong leadership, you will be able to guide that ship, right? You'll be able to reset and redirect. So the other two of the four, what I consider to be must-have business, sort of universal truths, business principles or pillars, if you will, really are operations and then, certainly growth and marketing, right? I like to say, and I like to intentionally put them in that order, because oftentimes we sort of go running enthusiastically after the growth element, and yet we haven't sort of systematized or operationalized or implemented the right processes and systems and put those in place first, so that the team and of course the interrelationship there is that then the team feels shaky, right? You want those operational systems to be in place, to be the scaffolding, to be the framework for your team, so they feel confident, they are rock solid, and then you can market and grow and drive the business in, and you can then rest assured that your patients are going to have the experience that you want them to have. There's more of a predictable level of service that's provided if you get the operational end down first and then drive volume, right?
So operational, tell me more about what you mean by that. Does that mean the how-to?
It is. It really is. It has a lot to do with what are the policies and procedures? Are they documented? In smaller businesses, what I found to be true is that, people stay, especially in smaller communities. And so you might have 8 or 10 employees and everybody's been there for 20 years and everybody knows what to do and nothing's written down because we know what we're doing. And that certainly can make sense for a while. You can sort of skate by with that. If you decide that you need to implement something more innovative, that's where I like to focus on. Sort of the implementation part is also part of operations, because look, it's great to be a visionary leader and to have all these wonderful ideas and continually innovate. If you don't know how to build the system to get it across the finish line, it can be frustrating for everyone. It's frustrating for you because you don't feel like, as the owner, that your ideas are being taken seriously. You're not seeing the fruit of your labor. You're not seeing the same level of enthusiasm and excitement for those ideas. And yet on the team side, they're just exhausted. It's just another, sort of flavor of the month, so to speak. And so implementation, I believe, is also sort of that how to execute an idea from start to finish how to get it across the finish line and build the system and the process that supports it so that the team feels really comfortable with it is part of that operational sort of business, business discipline, if you will. And then, of course, like I said, marketing and growth, that tends to be sort of the sexy, fun stuff. Everybody loves that part. I liken operations and systems to sort of having to eat your broccoli first before you get dessert.
I love it. And really, when you think about it, I knew that when I bought my practice and we started out back in 2002, the practice was fabulous. And I don't mean to make it sound like there was a problem with it, but it had not grown and changed in a very long time.
Right.
And so we had choices. We could either go out and start to market, or we could get things right and set and working in the way we wanted it to work before we started bringing people in to see things as we had them then, which wasn't what I wanted them to see right away. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Bingo. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. You really did. And what happens is that, it's sort of, cleaning house first, right?
Right.
You want, if you're going to have a party, you want to, make sure that everything is in order before you open up the door and say, welcome, come on in. And so I think it's getting your house in order, right? Before you drive the volume or the business in, so that you're assured that they're getting the service that they want and need. And I think, April, one last thing that I want to say about that too, is that oftentimes the owners believe that they have to be the one to do it themselves. And that's really where effective delegation comes in, because and look, again, why it's so important to spend the effort to elevate and enhance your own leadership skills is because here's the thing, you can't do it yourself.
Yeah.
Here's the truth. You cannot run this business by yourself. You must have the team engaged to help you. And so delegating, and the key operative word here is effective delegation, is also part of that implementation process, right? Because you don't have to do it by yourself.
Right. I
It
love
doesn't have
it.
to be as overwhelming.
Yes. And I can tell you at first, the reasons you lose sleep at night are money, financial. Once you solve that problem, the next reason you lose sleep at night as an owner is this whole process of leadership, the team, the culture, and getting to the point of being able to implement anything and have it work. And the disappointments of marketing and having someone come in and see something in your practice that isn't the way you intended it to be. So unfortunately, I think we all know what it looks like when it's not working.
Yeah.
And the goal for all of us is to really get to a place where, and the what's in it for me is this: get to a place where it runs smoothly and beautifully on its own. And I'm still the leader, but I can step away and it still is a beautiful place for a patient to go to.
Yes.
And that's really my goal, because I want to know that at the end of the day, in our practice, anyone who's stepped into the doors of our practice, we change their lives for the better when they leave.
Yeah.
And I know that isn't possible with just one person performing well. It's going to take everybody on the team. And so I want people to come into our practice as employees, as team members that understand that culture and they want to live it with me. Right. And live it with the rest of our team. And I know that we're doing it well when I have an employee that says, they have other opportunities, they have other things they want to do. And I'm happy for them to move forward in their life as well. But I know we're doing it well when they say, I just don't want to leave. I love it here.
Oh my gosh. Well said. That really is the goal, isn't it?
It is.
And it can be so freeing. You want to be able to feel that you could take a 2 or 3 week vacation and not receive a single phone call and come back and know that your business is fine and your patients are fine. Yeah. That they did this themselves without you. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's, one of there's a Lao Tzu, an ancient Chinese philosopher, had a leadership quote about that. Was one of my still is one of my all-time favorites, is that at the end of the day, people will say we did this ourselves. And that's a great leader, is to be able to foster that.
I love that. Well, this has been phenomenal. Kelly, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm just excited that people will now have the opportunity to dive into those 4 areas that we spoke about. We're going to spend more time. This is as much as we can do in this period of time. But for any of you who want to learn more and really understand in each of those areas how you can change your practice, make sure you visit us at Optometric Management Education. You'll be able to see Kelly and I talk about these areas in a lot more detail, and you'll be able to walk through it with your team, because the intent here is that, again, leadership is for everyone, and we want your team to improve so that you can, at the end of the day, know that you've done what you wanted to do in life and rest easy and smile and be able to move along with your personal life, being successful at the other things you want to do other than being an optometrist and a business owner. So Kelly, thank you so much. And we'll look forward to seeing you again on future episodes.
Thank you so much, April. It's been an honor.
Before neural lenses, I always had eye strain,
eye dryness,
eye fatigue,
moderate to severe headaches.
I had to take prescription medication.
It was to the point where my kids, they'd want me to sit down and color or read them books, and I couldn't do nothing.
When I got my neural lenses, my headache went away.
I wasn't taking Tylenol anymore.
Can't explain it, but it worked.
I would pay double for my neural lenses because I can't go a day without them.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Opt In with Dr. April Jasper.